Go ahead and get the meeting started. We'll want to welcome everybody. Good afternoon. We do have a quorum, so we can move on with the business. My name's Keith Griffey. I'm the CFO for Bullitt County Fiscal Court. I'll be sitting in for Mr. Chapman today. He's not here, and we'll go ahead and do some introductions.
I'm David Burton. I'm a transportation planner at KIPTA, and I'm sitting in for Larry Cheney.
Jim Urban sitting in for myself, Oakland County Planning and Zoning.
Kevin Beatty, Town of Clarksville. Matt Meunier, City of Jeffersontown.
Andy Crouch, Jeffersonville. I'm just sitting.
Jeff O'Brien, Louisville Metro. Tom Hawkeye, TPC District 5.
Bob Nunley, Ball and Melton Consulting Engineers.
Vince Robinson with Crown Work.
Mike King, Louisville Metro.
Dirk Owen, Louisville Metro.
Patricia Tennant, Kentucky Youth Advocate. Tracy Monks, American Heart Association. Shaylin Smith, American Heart Association.
Chester Hicks, Louisville Downtown Partnership.
Stacey Burton, KIPTA.
Randy Savage, KIPTA.
Sarah Bear, KIPTA. Elizabeth Park with KIPTA.
Jared Haley with KIPTA.
Nick Bale with KIPTA.
Andy Rush, KIPTA.
Ashley Tenius, KIPTA.
All right, thank you all. At this time, let's see, we've got the minutes from July 25th. Hoping that people have looked at those. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, we have the public comment period. Do we have anybody that would like to speak from the public sector? Hearing none, we'll move on. Public meeting report. Ashley.
On September 10th, we were at the Age Friendly Louisville meeting, and September 13th, we were at Creative Mornings. On September 19th, the public comment period began for our new participation plan update. So we've already gotten some comments, which I'll talk to you all about in just a little while. And yesterday, we were at the One Southern Indiana Business Expo. Any questions? That concludes my report.
And officially welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's see, Every Commute Counts program.
Yes, thank you very much.
Stacy.
I know it takes a minute to get this switched over, and in the meantime, I'll pass these out. There you are. Some of you have already heard a little spiel about our rebranded Every Commute Counts program. We were formerly known as Ticket to Ride until late May, June 1 of this year. And so I'm here to bring everybody up to speed on what has changed with the program, what has stayed the same with the program, as well as just remind everybody what we offer, what we do. Thank you. You'll take one. You don't need one, do you, Randy? I was going to say, Randy knows what we're about. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. There we go. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with our program, and I think everybody is, but we have really one primary goal, and it's to reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles. And this hopefully will result in less congestion and improved air quality. We also hope that it has these related benefits, and we have found much to our in our experience that it does. We actually help employers retain employees, which often helps with economic growth, a more efficient use of resources, and we do assist our partnering agencies with meeting goals, air quality goals, other sorts of goals, and overall improve quality of life. For those of you who do not know, we do serve the full 9-county KIPTA region, which is the 2 counties in southern Indiana, Clark and Floyd, as well as the 7 Kentucky counties on the Kentucky side. A little redundant there. So basically, the trip has to begin and or end in one of those 9 counties in order to make a person eligible for our ride matching and or van pool services. In other words, we have van pools that start here that go to Cincinnati, Ohio, or go to Georgetown, Kentucky, in order to get commuters to work. And we have been partnering with TARC since 2000 in order to administer the van pool program. They have been great partners, and we couldn't have done it without them. For those of you who aren't aware, Emergency Ride Home is perhaps one of our best kept secrets. It seems like everybody knows us for our van pool program. They don't know us much about our ride matching, and they know us even less for the Emergency Ride Home. Emergency Ride Home is any registrant with us is eligible to let us know, file some paperwork. But if they have an emergency, like unplanned overtime, or they get sick, or their child gets sick, and they have carpooled or van pooled, ridden a bus, they need to get home like now, we'll cover that trip up to 4 times a year. That's a safety net. And that's to help people lessen their fear about ride sharing. We know that these emergencies happen, so we're saying we've got a way to help you get through that. So Emergency Ride Home, we also administer that for the entire region. The only thing that they have to do is register with us, and registering with us is absolutely free. As you all know, the decisions that this policy body makes directly impacts air quality, and through your continued support of our program, we have been able to show some improvements to air quality through our program, so directly through your actions, improvements to the region. Basically, carpooling, vanpooling, anything that you can do besides riding by yourself in a single occupancy vehicle is going to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I am lucky enough to have a pretty steady carpool partner who happens to work at KIPTA, and I log my commute, and just my commuting alone for last fiscal year helped save over 1,500 pounds of greenhouse gas pollutants. That's just one person, and it's just a 7.5-mile commute. The people who are doing, 50, 60-mile commutes, way more impact than I'm having. I'm very fortunate to live so close to work. To give you some idea, I know I've covered this at the board and also at the TPC meeting, but I still can't get over the numbers. This is for fiscal year 19, the year that we just closed out on June 30th, 2019. Reduction in vehicle miles traveled alone was almost 40 million, and a cost savings for commuting is almost at 10 million. And then the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, the pollutants, it's by the tonnage, which is just absolutely, again, amazing to me to think about, and that's just for the people that we have in our system. Right now, today, we've got 2,500 registrants. Around 500 of those are van poolers. We have rebranded. I will say we probably, through the rebrand, have had more contact and engagement in our brand than we have had in a while. Those numbers are doing an uptick. It's been a really successful. We're being met with a lot of enthusiasm throughout the region. So I can't wait to see what these numbers might be next year. Again, for those of you who haven't seen the new updated look, our old vans are on the left side, and the newer version is on the right. And again, our partnership with TARC allowed us to advertise with them because riding the bus is perhaps the most efficient form of ride sharing, unless you can telework, in terms of greenhouse gas savings. So they were kind enough to give us quite a deal on advertising with them, and it helps them out and helps us out to boot. Our website has also been rebranded. We have a lot of information that is available to anybody before they even log in or register with us, and then a ton more information afterwards. To give you some idea about ride sharing, what we do now is anybody who registers with us and logs at least 4 non-SOV trips a month is eligible for a gift card drawing every month. And then what's really exciting is our software developer has created a new module. We're taking advantage of it. There was no increase in the price, so that was good. But it allows for challenges for employers. In other words, if you have an employer who has different work sites, then the work site at Trent Street can compete with the work site on Main Street and see who logs the most alt-mode commutes. We are currently trying this out with Louisville Metro, very small basis with Develop Louisville. Since this is new, we want to make sure before we roll it out to the entire Louisville Metro staff that we've got it working properly. And And also U of L, faculty and staff, we're working with them right now, again, on a trial basis, hoping to roll the challenges out later this year. And those are our civic partners, but we can, in fact, do this for any of the employers that we work with. We can do it at a single work site. Everybody can compete against each other. So that is one way to make it a little bit more exciting. The other thing is as an employer, as KIPTA, as Louisville Metro, in other words, at KIPTA there are 3 people who regularly log their commute. Thank you, Randy. KIPTA can show that their employees contributed to over 2,000 pounds of greenhouse gas emission savings. So KIPTA can claim that, and other employers looking to become more green, be known as more sustainable, can do that as well. So if you are working with any employers who have that kind of interest, please point them in our direction. That is it. It's short and sweet. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you all for your time today.
Any questions for Stacy? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the Complete Streets Working Group. Jim, thank you for.
Thank you. As chairman of the TPCC, one of our members had asked us to consider a regional complete streets policy, and so on August 29th, we met as a group, and when I say a group, it was really almost every jurisdiction from the region was represented. Bullitt County, Oldham Metro, TARC, New Albany, Jeffersonville, J-Town, Air Pollution Control District, Clarksville, to discuss the formation of a complete streets policy. And excuse me, KIPTA staff had put together some sample policies from all around the country. And at the end of our meeting, we unanimously decided that it was a good thing for us to consider putting together a policy. So at the last TTCC meeting, we asked this to be advanced to the TPC. And so I guess as the chair of the TTCC again, we're asking the policy committee to allow us to continue to meet and develop a complete streets policy. Good?
I think that's good.
It's about as quick a summary as I can give you.
And Jim, I'm sitting on that meeting with you. How far along are you all in that?
Well, again, we just had one meeting,
Okay.
and the idea was to just come together, discuss what a complete streets policy might look like based on these examples, and really, we really can't proceed unless we have, I guess, kind of the action of the TPC to go ahead and form this subcommittee and continue to meet and develop the policy.
Do you have any idea what kind of timetable you'd be looking at for that?
I don't think it's going to be very long. We have really great examples of complete streets policies. I would expect that it's probably 2 or 3 more meetings tops, and we would be able to bring something forward.
Are you looking to form a subcommittee or a working group?
Good question. You tell me.
It's a working group.
It's a
Working group?
It's a working group.
Okay.
I get those confused.
Sure.
And you already have the folks in place for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And again, there's just about everybody's willing to be on it and come to the meeting. So, and unanimously, we all decided it was a good thing for the region.
Right. So we need a motion to continue with the working group for the Complete Streets Working Group.
Working group.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion or questions? I know I went out of line on that. I'll probably get the book thrown at me, Robert's rules on that one. Are there any other questions for Jim? Any comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you for your work on that as well. Connecting Kentuckiana Metropolitan. David, your presentation.
That's me, yeah. You guys are well aware that we've been working on the update to the MTP for some time now. And we finally are in a position, a really strong position, where we are ready to start bringing the products forward that we've been working on so that we can get this update complete and keep moving forward. One of the key components we have to address is it reasonable for us to assume that the projects that we've identified in the MTP will be or could be built within the 20 years or by 2040? And the way we look at that is we just try to anticipate the resources that might be available for completing the projects that are in the MTP, and then compare them to the costs. just like you would with any other budget. We want to make sure that it's reasonable and that it makes sense, that we can afford to move forward with the projects that we've identified as being as being the MTP type projects. So what we want to do today is just sort of step through a very quick process of how we do this to make sure that you're comfortable with it and that we can continue the update using this process for identifying the resources and then also the estimated costs. It's important to point out that we're talking about a planning level source or sense of dollars. In other words, there's no commitment from the states that if we say we will receive $3 million or $300 million or $2 billion over the life of the plan, there's no commitment that we will actually get those dollars. No one can commit that far in advance. But we are trying to get just a basic idea of what may be available as we go forward. And we're looking at the federal formula funds, the ones that Nick talks about all the time when he brings the tip to the committee. We're looking at other federal sources that might be available as we go forward. Now, when we put the financial plan together, we look at it by state. We look at the Indiana sources and costs and the sources for Kentucky. And so we want to make sure that we have a pretty balanced approach by each state. When we talk about the projects and the sources, we look at, as you know, we look at roads, bridges, bike ped, transit, things along those lines. So the way we do this is we try to anticipate what resources may be available through the year 2040 by looking at what's been programmed in the TIP recently. And so we basically get an average of what's been programmed in the TIP and then push that out 20 years. And that's a rough estimate of what we think may be available as we go forward. And then we have costs that are provided to us by the sponsors when they actually submit their projects. So basically we are comparing the resources to the costs. And if we're within 10%, then we're doing a good job. Now we also have to adjust for year of expenditure, inflation. And what we've been doing historically over the years is we add a 5% increase compounded annually on the resource side, and then the project sponsors have given us their costs in year of expenditure, so we try to incorporate those and then compare one to the other. Okay, so what are we looking at? We started off when we looked at the TIP and then pushed that out 20 years. We had about 1.4 billion available on the Indiana side, and about 6.2 on this side of the river. Now we adjusted a little bit on the Indiana side. We brought that 1.4 down to about 900 million, and I'll show you why in just a minute. And we left the 6.2, left that alone. Now the projects we've identified that were submitted to the MTP on the Indiana side were about $400 million. And then on the Kentucky side, about 6.1. Now we have this group project process, this group project category that we've also identified as part of the MTP TIP relationship. And so we try to estimate what we think might be needed to go forward with the group projects. And if you can recall, the group projects are those smaller projects, sidewalks, maintenance, some smaller maintenance projects, some small bike ped projects, things along those lines. So we've estimated that looking at what's been obligated or programmed in the TIP, not obligated, but programmed in the TIP, we have about 500 million in Indiana and about 700 million here in Kentucky. So then now I've circled the 400 and the 6.1 because those may change between your action, hopefully, that you take today and the final document. But we don't anticipate that they will change a lot, and we don't anticipate that they will change enough to make a huge difference. But as we've gone through this process, some sponsors are giving us updated, more refined estimates. So we're going to keep tweaking those a little bit here and there as we go forward. All right, so the math. So as you know, we had about 900 million in Indiana and about 6.2 in Kentucky. if you take the projects and the groups and you do it just like you do in your checkbook, we are within 10% on both sides of the river. In Indiana, we're about 36 million over, and I know that sounds like a lot, but if you think about it in terms of billions instead of hundreds or thousands, and you think about it over 20 years, that's not a whole lot of money. That's about 4% more than what we had anticipated might be available for the MTP. Then in Kentucky, we're about 10% over, which is about 600 million over the 20 years, and we feel pretty comfortable with that. So both are within that 10%. So we feel pretty comfortable that we've got a nice financial plan to go forward and to complete the rest of the MTP with. So is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Yes. Is it within 10%? Yes. So we've hit those two main triggers that we wanted to hit. And then, so what does that mean for the MTP? It means that we are in a position on the financial plan side that we feel like we can proceed with the update, and we can complete all the different steps that are left and needed to bring forward to you guys here in the very near future. So we think we're in a pretty good spot financially to advance and to continue with the MTP update. Now, there'll be two other pieces that are going to be in the final document. The Bridges project, while it's complete and open to the public, there's still tolling going on. So we want to try to reflect what that means to the financial picture going forward. So we're going to be working with the states and FHWA to make sure we have a pretty good understanding of how we need to reflect the Bridges project going forward. And then there's operations and maintenance. We're going to take a look at that also. And that's not necessarily always included in this financial analysis because we don't always have operating and maintenance projects in the MTP. But we do need to make sure that we think it's reasonable for us to keep the roadways and the sidewalks and the buses and the bridges safe and maintained going forward. So this will be that snapshot. Are we within reasonable limits on the operations and maintenance side of things? We presented this to the TTCC, and they have recommended that we proceed with the MTP update using this financial plan process that we've talked about today. So what we're seeking from the policy committee is action to go ahead and continue with the update using this financial plan approach. And pretty much these numbers that you've seen with the understanding that there may be some tweaks, but not enough to make a large difference. Are you?
Okay, are there any questions for David on the presentation? David, the 10%, when we look at that and we see that there's that it's within 10% over, where does that 10% come from? Is that an arbitrary number? Is that where, I mean, how did we come to that?
We talked to the two states about this in TARC many years ago, I guess, and tried to work together to identify what's a reasonable estimate.
Okay.
When you're looking 20 years out and you're looking at this kind of money. One thing you have to keep in mind is that the transportation acts over time are going to change. And so those funding amounts that will be available are going to change. And the other part you have to keep in mind is that a lot of the projects that have been identified aren't going to see the light of day for another 10 or 15 years. So the cost estimates that we receive for those projects are really good guesses because they won't really know what the actual costs are until they get into the design and start looking a little bit deeper into these projects. So those project costs are going to go up and they're going to go down. So 10%, we feel like we're doing a pretty good job in trying to get that together.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to, I guess, continue with the MPT financial plan? Is that the best way to put that?
Basically what we're saying.
Continue with the MPT financial plan. Is there a motion to move forward? Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Let's see, Nick, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Tagging along on to what David just presented, I just wanted to provide a very brief update on the development of the new Transportation Improvement Program. This is for fiscal years 2020 to fiscal years 2025. Just for a little background, we're currently operating out of the fiscal year 2018 to 2021 Transportation Improvement Program, often called the TIP. This is essentially a 4 to 5 year budget for the region's federal funds as well as state funds and any other local funds that are used for regionally significant projects. We have to update this document about every 2 to 3 years, and this time we're doing it in conjunction with the MTP update, the long range plan. Back in July, early July, I sent out an email to all of the project sponsors throughout our region and provided them with all of their existing project information forms. So those are the documents that every project sponsor fills out in order to tell us and tell the public what a project is all about in terms of the name, the description, funding that's associated with the project, and when that project might be open to the public. So those forms, there's about a 3-page form. So those went out to all the project sponsors at the beginning of July, and we have since received all of those PIFs or project information forms back from all the project sponsors recently. So the next step for staff is essentially, and we've been doing this on an ongoing basis as they've been coming in, is reviewing all of those documents to just identify what things have changed. If a project is not going to be completed by 2020 and now it's going to be completed by 2025, those are things we need to know and document as part of our TIP. So staff is continuing to go through those. We should be done probably in another week or so. At that point, we'll be able to start analyzing all of the funding and breaking everything down into different funding programs. This is one of the requirements of the TIP, is to show that we are fiscally constrained, meaning we're not planning to spend more than we bring into the region. And so that'll take probably another few weeks. In terms of the long-range schedule, we're following right in line with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. I think in December, we're planning to come back to this Transportation Policy Committee and ask for approval to move forward with public involvement. That's a 45-day process. And then obviously we'll be coming back to you all for final approval in February, March timeframe. I will say that we did receive comments from at least one project sponsor that the time we provided to complete the PIFs and go through these updates was not enough, and so we acknowledge that, and we'll, moving forward, try to do a better job of working with project sponsors to make sure there's ample time to review all of this. It is a massive update of our Transportation Improvement Program, and we understand what kind of burden that places on everybody. At this time, I'd be willing to take any questions or comments that anyone has. There's no action on this item, to be clear. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Ashley, participation plan.
Yes. So we have a current participation plan that was written in 2014. And in that participation plan, it states that we will review it annually, which I have done each year, and that it will be updated every 4 years. So that means that it is up for an update this year. And in February, the staff began reviewing it. And in March, I came to the TPC and asked for a working group to get together to go over it. We went over that in April and in May. I was off for a few months, and now that I'm back, we started public involvement on September 19th. We've gotten some great comments so far, but it just started. We have 45 days. So we have 5 public meetings coming up. There will be one on October 8th in New Albany. There will be one October 9th in Shepherdsville. There's one October 17th in LaGrange. There's one October 22nd in St. Matthews, and there's one October 24th in Jeffersonville. So we're going to all 5 counties. We ask you to please help us spread the word with your constituents, any type of social media. When you see anything from us that we're having a meeting, please encourage people to come to these meetings so we can get comments from the public. And then when we close that public comment period on November 2nd, we will have a working group meeting to go over those. We'll have the TPC review those comments. We'll bring those comments to the TPCC on November 13th. And then on November 19th, I will have a complete update ready for the TPC and ask for approval of the new participation plan. We don't have any action requested today, but I'm happy to answer any questions or come speak to anybody that you think would benefit hearing about the KIPTA participation plan.
What time are the meetings? I know
They are
the
from
Shepherd's
4:30 till 6:30. And a lot of them are on transit lines, but not all of them are.
Right.
Based on our working group meeting, we decided since there were 5 meetings, we would have as many as we could available with transit, but some weren't going to have transit. They would just be in the area that the persons from that county thought would be best attended. So we were trying to go to the LaGrange Community Center. We wanted to get as many people as we could. And I talked to some people from LaGrange and was told that would be a great location. Same with Shepherdsville. They said for Bullitt County,
Centrally
that's a
located.
centrally located place and that you would get people to come there. Sometimes when we have meetings in the library, they're not very well attended. So we're doing what we can to get the most weigh-in from the community instead of just what we've always done.
You know, if
What location in New Albany?
We'll be at the library in New Albany. I said we're not going to all libraries, but it is going to be the St. Matthew's Library and then the New Albany Floyd County Library, the Ken Ellis Center in Jeffersonville, and LaGrange Community Center and Shepherdsville City Hall.
the more people we can get engaged in this process, the better we can help keep you informed of what people have to say. So if there's anything you can do to help to promote these events or to help Ashley collect more information from the public, that would be greatly appreciated. She can send you information that you could post on your Facebook pages or your Twitter pages or.
Like I said, we
Other
have gotten
pages.
some very great comments, and the comments are things that we could work towards, and that's what we want. We don't just want great feedback, everybody's happy with the status quo. We want real comments that are going to affect change and make the community know that we are listening to them, and that as the Transportation Policy Committee, the public is part of the comment process, and that the Transportation Policy Committee listens to what we hear when we're out in the community. So you'll see me again in November. Thank you. Probably in October too. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. David, the Kentucky, Indiana Transportation Excellence Award.
This is why everybody is here today. They want to know about the Kite Award, which is agenda item 10 in your packet. This is the 3rd or 4th year we've done this. I believe it is. And it's a pretty exciting thing because we try to get you to help us identify those projects that you think really soar above the rest. And you are the folks that can really help us to do that. So any member of the technical committee or this committee can submit a project for consideration that they think just soars above all the others and needs to be recognized for the benefit it brings to our region or to our communities. A application will be emailed out to everybody on the technical and the policy committee if it has not already been done so.
It's already out.
It's already out. And then on October 4th, Larry will be convening a group to begin looking at these projects and beginning to identify which of those projects is worthy of receiving the Glass Kite Trophy, which is very nice. And so the final nominees and the winner will be announced at the KIPTA annual meeting on November 26th that Jared's going to talk about in just a couple of minutes. But please submit as many projects as you like. They have to be within our MPA. They have to have had a phase in the current TIP for 2019 or have been completed in 2019. Past winners have included, I think KYTC has won once or twice, Tom, do you know off the top of your head? How many times KYTC's taken that beauty home?
We do good work.
Didn't you get one, Andy, for?
Last year with Mount Holly.
That's right.
Roundabout.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I think the Bridges project was one.
Bridges Project one, I think,
The two-way conversion street
yeah,
over in New Albany.
New Albany, that's right, that's what it was, yeah.
Parks received it the first year.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. It's a good opportunity to kind of show off what you've been doing, and hopefully you'll help us out by nominating projects for consideration. And if we can send out the email again if you don't have it, or if you want it, let me know, and I'll be sure to get it to you ASAP.
Great. Thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, you're back up.
Yes. Thank you all. I'm here to present the administrative modifications to the current fiscal year 2018 to 21 TIP. In your packets, there's probably almost 20 pages of changes here. These include administrative modifications 34, which were processed on October 9th, as well as administrative modification 35. Both those were processed in August when this body did not meet. As I've mentioned before, administrative modifications are considered minor changes to the TIP and do not require TPC approval, but we do like to present them, obviously, and make sure everyone's informed of what changes are occurring. I'm going to summarize a little bit of what went on with administrative modification 34. This is quite lengthy. There are a few new projects that were added, including in Jefferson County, retrofitting dynamic message systems in place of the existing ones along I-64, 264, and 265. There was also low-cost safety improvements. It's a new project that's being added to Kentucky 155 in Jefferson County, as well as, there's one other I was going to highlight for you all. Two more. Kentucky Transportation Cabinet decided to award transportation alternative funds to two new projects in the last 45, 60 days. One is in Pee Wee Valley, Ash Avenue sidewalk installation between Elm Avenue and Old Floydsburg Road. That's a brand new project, so we'll get new sidewalks in that community. As well as in Plantation in Jefferson County, they're going to be doing construction of new ADA compliant ramps at all the corners. The vast majority of the project changes that you see in this administrative modification are related to the Transportation Alternatives Program. We were made aware maybe about 3 months ago from KYTC Central Office staff that there's an impending federal rescissions, which we knew about that at the end of the last year before the federal transportation legislation expires, which is currently called the FAST Act. There's always a rescission that takes place, and that can essentially, the federal government takes money back from multiple programs. I do not believe Transportation Alternatives was part of that rescission in the previous bill called MAP 21, but we were made aware of that. That meant that any funds that we have received as a region up until fiscal year 2019, which is about $3 million for us, is subject to federal rescissions, meaning those funds could be taken back by the federal government if they were not obligated on projects. So we did have a risk about $3 million. So for those project sponsors who have those funds, some of them were just recently awarded the funds in the last 12 to 18 months. Staff felt it important to secure those projects going forward, that they would not completely lose those funds, because what we do not know from Federal Highways and KYTC is how the program is going to be impacted. What we know is that sometime in October, we're supposed to find out from the Federal Highways and USDOT preliminary rescissions numbers, and at that time we can readjust and reassess the situation. So what you saw on a lot of these pages were projects that are currently Transportation Alternatives funded being converted to surface transportation projects, to ensure that those projects have their funds going forward, that they can continue to obligate their funds and move forward and not have to cancel a project, which could include paying funds back to the federal government. We didn't really see another option. We do realize that there are project management implications to some of those projects when they change from transportation alternatives to surface transportation funds. And we will do our best to work with those folks to try to minimize those burdens. But this was the only way we saw or identified in working with the cabinet to ensure that these projects can move forward. So there's several changes that were made in Administrative Modification 34, and then in Administrative Modification 35, we actually had a reverse course on maybe 4 or 5 of those changes, because Federal Highways came back and said, no, you're not allowed to move those funds around. These funds can be moved around, and that was for those projects whose funds had already been obligated or authorized or in an agreement. we could not retroactively change the program amount. So those projects aren't affected in terms of their moving forward. If the funds were obligated, they'll continue to move forward as is. But we felt it necessary to make sure that every project that's in our dedicated program continues to be able to move forward. I want to stop there before I go on to Administrative Modification 36 because that's a lot of information I just provided and a lot of technical jargon. Are there any questions or comments about the rescissions? If not, I'd be happy to meet with anybody afterwards if there's more specific questions. All right, and then finally, Administrative Modification 36. That is the current one that's being presented today. There are two changes in Indiana. One is to Floyd County's Charlestown Road Complete Streets project. So we're talking about complete streets earlier. Floyd County is already working on things like that. This is the construction of a multi-use path from Sunset Drive to County Line Road. We are switching the funding source there. It was originally funded as a congestion mitigation air quality project, and we are going to switch all those funds back to that program. And then there is additional Floyd County project just updating the state ID. In Kentucky, we had two projects. One is maintenance on the bridge over Goose Creek in Jefferson County near River Road, and another bridge maintenance for Stonebridge Road. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. If not, that's all I have for today.
Any questions for Nick?
Thank you all.
All right, other business. We do have a couple of pieces of other business. Ashley and Jared, y'all.
I'll go first real quick. Dave referenced it earlier in November. The board meeting, annual meeting, will be on Tuesday, November 26th, and it'll be at Louisville Marriott East, where we've held it in the past few years, which is off Southhurst Bourne at 1903 Embassy Square Boulevard. This committee will meet that morning at 9:30, and then the board meeting will be at 11. You'll be receiving your regular meeting notices as it gets closer, but we wanted to go ahead and be sure you had it on your calendar.
That's a really good thing to attend. If you guys can make that, we would really appreciate you participating in this meeting. It's our annual review, and then there's a lunch that follows, and it's a board meeting. It's a really exciting event, and we hope you guys can make it.
Thank you, Jared. Ashley?
Real quick, Larry's not here because he's at the Indiana NPO conference with Adam Forseth, our GIS manager, and we got informed that they accepted an award yesterday for Outstanding Planning Project for the project evaluation and submittal project process for the whole Indiana NPO. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we got that award.
Cool. And we want to thank everybody who participated in that, because man, that was a challenge for everyone. But you guys really came through and made it happen. So thank you all very much for helping us out with that.
Good. Is there any other business to be brought before this committee? Anything else? Pretty quick.
That was pretty quick.
All right. I guess hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? I think we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Keep this second.